welcome to Turtle Tracks Podcast. This is your host, Brian Van Hooker, and I'm here with Joel F. Naprstek, the painter and comic cover artist who's done work for people like DC and Dark Horse and others. He's also got some really interesting things about turtle history that I thought our listeners would enjoy. So, Joel, welcome to being here. Thank you so much. I'm glad this finally worked out.
Glad to meet you, Brian. Thanks.
So, I guess to get started, can you give me kind of the highlights of your art career, if you don't mind?
Okay, if there is some highlights, we'll see. Yeah, well, I went to I'm of the '60s generation, and I went to art school, but not an art school, college art class right out of high school, and I really was into '60s stuff. I was screwing off this and that, and the art classes were not that hot. It was a community college. So after about a year and a half, I bailed on it. I said, if this is what art is, I don't want to do it. When I was younger, I was always the high school and grade school artist kid,
Sure.
all that stuff. And so I bailed on it, and I said, man, the hell with this. I'm going to get a job. You could get a job easy, as a kid. So I went through a few things, worked in a factory, and it came down to about 4 years later. This was around 1971 or so. My girlfriend at the time and my mother kept saying to me, you got to get out of this factory job, go back to an art school. And I used to be, didn't think that I was good enough to get into a top flight art school, living outside of New York City. I'm about 30 miles out of New York City. I just thought, is the big time to go to art school in New York City. So I figured I wouldn't be able to make it. I wouldn't have the stuff, and how am I going to stack up against everybody in this high class art, avant-garde art school and everything. So short story, I took the shot at it. I finally was talked into it. I bailed on the factory job, which was kind of a tough choice. They wanted to train me as a machinist, which was a good job at the time.
Okay.
And they were going to train me, wouldn't cost me anything. And I'd have a sure job at this place, a lighting factory. And so I said, all right, screw it. I'm going for the art route, because that's what I really wanted to do. And went to New York City School of Visual Arts. And that changed everything for me. On the very first day that I was there, we didn't have, the model never showed up. It was a drawing class, as luck would have it. And the model didn't show up. So we just drew a bicycle that was there. And I'm thinking, wow, this is kind of wild. The guys, instead of a model, we're drawing a bike, and he's telling us all this stuff about it and about drawing and everything. And I'm getting thrilled. And so within a few weeks, after seeing what I was doing, and he may have told everybody this, my teacher, Bert Hassan, his name was, eccentric guy, of course, he leans over to me real close and he says, you're going to be an artist. And it's like, holy shit, geez, right away this guy is saying that to me. And so that was a big boost to me, first year art school. And I never looked back from there. I never had any doubt. Just with that, looking back, I really wasn't that good, but, it gave me that ego boost or whatever it is to go forward with it. And that's what I've been doing ever since, So anyway, 4 years of School of Visual Arts. And when I got out, 2 years out in 1976, I was asked to take over a class there. A painting class, because that's what I was doing for illustration students. And Mike Dooney happened to be in one of my classes in the second year that I taught there. And this was for second year students. After they went through a foundation class, they then picked their electives and decided which way they wanted to go. Fine arts, graphic design, illustration, whatever they wanted to do.
I should point out that to the listeners. I mean, granted, I mean if they're listening to this podcast, they know who Mike Dooney is, but one of the like key artists of turtle art back at Mirage Studios. Like, just did some of the
Yeah,
most amazing, and a lot of like really beautiful paintings that he
yeah.
did. So, anyway, continue. I just wanted to insert that in there just in case to catch.
Okay, well, I mean, I got a little funny bit about that.
Please.
Uh, I had him, in the second year, and he was not always the students that you'd get are interested in the exact same stuff that you're doing or as a teacher.
Okay.
Your job is to give them the basics in a certain discipline.
Okay.
So I was teaching painting mainly to students who wanted to be illustrators or comic book artists or animators or something. It fit that whole general type of thing, where you're actually doing realistic kind of characters and in stories and so forth like that.
Okay.
So Mike happened to be one of the students. He always found students that were a little bit better than the others, and he was one of the ones at the painting and with the assignments that he did. So moving on to a couple of years or a year or two later, he would always come back into my class after he was done and, show me what he's doing and this and that. And one day he comes in, this was already, like I said, 2 years removed from him being in my class. And he says, I'd always say, how you doing? You getting work and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, well, I was offered something. He said, there's some guys up in Massachusetts that are putting together this comic book. And I had a little bit of a snooty attitude because I was an illustrator. I was doing stuff at Slick magazines and all that stuff. And comic book, at the time was, it's not the way I feel now. And I changed it quickly, but there was like this hierarchy that you
Sure.
had in your,
Yeah.
so I said, really, you want to do that? And he starts describing it. He says they're turtles that are dressed up in, like costumes and stuff, and they're doing comic stories, sequential story, which I liked. But I said to him, I said, man, these guys, small outfit, Massachusetts, and I'm advising them not to do it. So that tells you something about my vision about things. And so I said, well, go ahead, and he went ahead, and lo and behold, in a few years, all that stuff, went big and everything. And he was there in the beginning of it and everything. So,
I think one thing people take, or I don't know, take for granted or don't realize is like, for somebody like me who grew up with the franchise, it's a normal thing. But like the phrase Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is this bizarre collection of words put together. So, I mean, it must have sounded like he was making a huge mistake and this is ridiculous.
yeah, well, that's what I thought, along with my bit of prejudice about things too.
Did you have any so did he show you anything? Like, did you have any thoughts about the Eastman and Laird books themselves, or no, it was just telling you.
No, I don't think there really was much out at the time.
Got it.
Because it could have been, I guess talking to him, you'd find out more. Everyone has a little bit different memory of it, but I don't recall seeing any artwork at all.
Got it.
He just described it. And in the description, it just sounded kind of screwy to me. You know what I'm thinking, come on, Mike, don't you want to do Time magazine covers and, at the time, Playboy illustration inside was a big thing, stuff like that. That's what's in my mind. I would never knock a student down. I would tell them kind of what I thought, and that's what I was telling them, but I wouldn't say something like, yeah, that's stupid, So anyways, so, he went on with it, and I had always liked comics because I read comics as a kid. I grew up in the 50s, and it was the EC era, seduction of the innocent and all that stuff. Comics were bad for you, and all that kind of thing. So I was not that aware. I loved certain artists, Wally Wood, Alex Raymond, and all them. But they were, well, Wally Wood, I wouldn't say classical, but he had a a great style and a realistic style. It was a little bit towards the seedy side imagery, which was cool, and his parodies and all that stuff. But comics were not something that was on my radar because I knew from, well, I didn't know because I really wasn't working in it, but comics didn't pay what regular illustration did.
Oh, okay.
Regular illustration, say you're doing a cover for a good magazine or something, you got some decent sized bucks out of it and you got it quick. Comics were paying per page and all that stuff, and they kind of owned everything. And you either penciled it, you inked it, you lettered it, you were like a cog in a wheel kind of thing. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Not too many comics, you were the whole ball of wax where you created it and all that kind of thing. And to me, that was always what you wanted to do. You wanted to own it all. So it's your artwork and all that stuff. And Mike was telling me, we have sort of the opportunity to do something like that, which I think they did, you know what I mean? Not right away, but I think they did. So anyways, that's how that went. Um, and to speed up a little, I taught at Visual Arts for another 9.5 years. And like any other business, and art school is a business, School of Visual Arts isn't a state funded school, it's a private school.
Okay.
Um, they would change heads of departments, the illustration department, which I was in. And when somebody new comes in, they sort of want to clean a little house, bring their own people in, kind of thing. So I wouldn't say I wasn't a favorite, but I wasn't, one of the fair-haired boys of the new director that came in. Not for any reason, it just was.
Sure.
And probably my class was dropping in attendance a little bit, and that's what they have to look at, how many students are taking your class versus this one, blah, blah, blah. So, I was nicely let go, and which was fine by me because by then I was working a lot, doing freelance work, and always I had this attitude, screw it. You know what I mean? I'm doing fine. I don't need these people, blah, blah, blah. So I worked as freelancer for a couple of years. And, tell me, Brian, if I'm going on too long.
No, no, no. This is no. Keep going. This is great.
Okay. People get wrapped up in their own story. So anyway, I was out in Morris County, New Jersey, where I lived, about another 40 miles west of New Jersey, and Dover, New Jersey, where the Joe Kubert Art School was and was only about 10 minutes west of me. And I'd known of it and everything. It was a private school and everything. And after about 2 years, I missed dealing with students and young artists that wanted to learn stuff. And I kind of felt that I had, excuse me, something to offer. I learned that at Visual Arts, And so I went up there, walked in one day, and saw Mike Chen, who was, I guess, administrator or something. He's no longer at the school, I don't think, but he was administrator of the school. So I had an interview with him, and he introduced me to Joe, and I showed Joe my work, and we sat down in Joe's studio and got along great and everything. So Joe says, yeah, well, it'd be great if you could come here and teach a color class, because what I was a painter, Okay. So at the time, painting was coming into comics a little bit more. They were full color painted stuff was not only classic comics anymore. If you know the old titles of classic comics,
Okay.
they told straight stories, classic stories and this and that.
I know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so there was a lot more covers being done with painting and so forth like that. So I kind of fit in with things, but I did not have much of a comic book portfolio or comic book creds, And the comic book students, and it's I don't think I had one female student in the whole school.
Okay.
Uh, it's just the way it was. All the comic guys were comic dudes, comic geeks, comic this, comic that. They were, everybody figured that they were going to be doing Batman in 2 more years, and everything
Sure.
like that. So just from the talk of them, I had to showing them in my illustrations and paintings, they liked them and so forth. And I learned that I had to show them and do demonstrations of things that sort of fit into what they might be doing. So I figured I better get some work in comics, which I started to show the portfolio around, got hooked up with a few people and all that.
Say, what was your first like published comics thing? And like, did your attitude by then had already changed towards comics, or?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you start looking at things. You start like anything else. Once you kind of dig into it a little bit more, you see that there's more there than what met the eye to you. When you had, I mean, let's be frank, a prejudiced eye to it,
Sure.
it changes your opinion. You look at the stuff, um, the drawing was terrific in comics. And I found artists that were doing stories that I liked a lot. People like Alex Toth, um, a lot of the Wally Wood stuff. A lot of artists that were not doing superhero costume stuff where it's a continual running fight, where they told, and when I say adult, I don't mean adult like X-rated stories. I mean adult stories that adults are going to pick up this comic book to read. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I call it sequential storytelling rather than comic stuff. Um, so anyway, I don't recall the very first thing. It was a cover for somebody because that's what I was going after. Probably a small publisher, I think. I'd have to look at it. And Mike introduced me to a bunch of people.
Oh,
I was seeing him at, I'd go to, and another part of the learning experience for me was going to comic conventions.
sure.
I didn't know that whole world was out there. How I saw how, even though you thought as an illustrator, in air quotes, that you were hot shit, there were no illustrators conventions. When you go to a comic convention, there's Artist Alley out there
Yeah.
where they allow you to come free as a comic artist. And you sit there and there's fans that come and see your stuff. And you can interact with art directors and editors. I don't know if I haven't been to a con in a long time now, but I don't know if you can still do that at
Oh
them.
yeah, certainly. Yes.
But so, I got all charged up with that. And I was going to some cons, not to set up a table and everything, but just to see what it was all about. So Mike introduced me to, and I was teaching at the Curate School, and I was doing demos of Batman stuff, Superman stuff, whatever, things that, because you got to sell students on their work. If you don't give them an assignment that they're going to like. You can't be one of these hard ass characters that says, this is what you're going to do. It's good for you, blah, blah, blah. You got to give them something that they're going to like.
Sure.
You vary assignments. You vary it to something like some of the students who might be more cartoony oriented rather than superhero or whatever. And that's what the Turtles fit into a little bit.
Yeah.
So I would vary that stuff and I do demos of that. And so Mike introduced me. He said, still knowing that painting was my thing. And I was interested in World War II aviation war comics and so forth. So he says, what we could do? He says, I can introduce you to Kevin Eastman. He's starting up this publishing house, Tundra.
Oh, right. Sure.
Which is up there, and he's not so much doing the Turtles anymore. He said, but Tundra, they're looking to do some different stuff and all that kind of thing. So I went up, introduced them, and didn't take long. And Kevin, in a meeting, he says, well, what would you like to do? He said, give me a story or give me something you'd like to do. So I said, well, I've always had this thing as a kid, and I've always loved war comics. Said I'm not a warmonger or anything like that, but I've always loved the romance and the excitement of a World War II group called the Flying Tigers,
Okay.
who were sort of a covert group that was put together. They were Americans who were paid as mercenaries, went over to China to fight the Japanese in World War II, early on in World War II. It was a ragtag group. They didn't have much money. Supply chain was broken up and all that kind of stuff. It's still a great story for all that. So he said, all right, great. He says, we'll hook you up with a writer. Because I said, I'm not really a writer. I know the story of this stuff. I said, but I'm not a writer to put it into a script or whatever. I said, I can certainly comment on it.
Sure.
Throw my 2 cents in there, But so he got a writer, and together we all put the thing together. And I started doing it, and the idea was it would be a painted comic, like a 2-volume thing
Oh, wow.
about the Flying Tigers. 64 pages, I think it was, part one and part two.
64 total or 30, 32, and 32?
Yeah, 32 and 32. Yeah, two separate, part one, part two.
Sure.
But the whole story going all the way through. It would
What was,
break.
what was your impression of Eastman? What was he like?
Eastman, he was great. It's terrific. He didn't bother anybody about, well, I only interacted with him, so he didn't bother me. Anything I did and sent up to him, he was all hot for it. You know what I mean? So, and I didn't really work with him. I can't remember who the first editor was now.
Um,
But anyway, it was no problem. I'd send him drawings, roughs, layouts, breakdowns of the story, scribbling type of stuff, with notes and all that. And halfway through, a young guy came named Phil Amara, Amara. And I don't think he's in comics anymore. In fact, I know he's not in comics. I'm still in contact with him. And he was a fresh new editor, and he took over the book. And he was great. He was a little bit more hands-on, and his input was terrific. Now, also at this time, Tundra, and I'm not really in because I wasn't up there on the day-to-day stuff, but I think, comics are nothing, they're not different than anything else in real life. When people give you a lot of freedom and throw tons of money at you and say whatever you want to do, people abuse it.
yeah.
And from what I heard, that's what happened with Tundra. Kevin had a lot of money to play around with and do things with. And a lot of people took his money with these pipe dream ideas to do stories. And most of them went nowhere. In fact, I don't know what Tundra books you can even find out there that really got finished. Maybe there are, but none that I know of. So anyway, Phil was taking over the reins of this project, and it was going good. And we were about maybe 3/4 of the way through it, and Kevin sold out to Dennis Kitchen Sink Publishing.
Okay.
If you've heard,
I've heard the name. I don't know it well.
yeah, well, not Kevin, Dennis Kitchen did a lot of underground comics that came out of the 60s, anti-government stuff, the Furry Freak Brothers. I don't know if you ever heard about that. It was all these counterculture comics that came out in the 60s, counterculture stuff and everything. And he wanted to become a bit bigger publisher. So he bought Tundra, and it became under Kitchen Sink. And so that's where we proceeded. And Dennis was fine with it all. We were rolling along. And he finally went bankrupt with the whole thing, So
Did Flying Tigers get finished?
no.
Oh, geez.
So that's what I'm getting to. I need a drink of my tea here to keep my voice. It I finished it, got all the work up to him, all 64 painted pages. And that's when they went belly up, you
Oh,
know. Probably if you did a little research, you'd get a little clearer story than what I'm giving you about it. But that's about the gist of it. And Phil Amara, who was there, he went on, got a job as an editor at Dark Horse, which was a great move for him, you know, and
sure.
more mainstream. Dark Horse at the time had come in producing really good books, great quality stuff and everything, and a little different than DC and Marvel and everything, you know. At the time, I was getting some freelance work from Marvel and a bit here from DC, but not book stuff. You know, it would be ads here and there or
Okay.
a pin page and something like that. Um,
So for
so,
Dark Horse, you did stuff like G.I. Joe, Alien,
yeah,
Predator. You did a whole bunch.
yeah. And that came about through former students and Phil Amara and everything like that too. So we're rolling along. Kitchen Sink went belly up, and they had all my artwork, which like drove me nuts. They had the original art, and it was all owned by me. That was a great thing about Kitchen Sink and Kevin. You know, they didn't. They were complete artist rights. They let
Right.
the artist have all the rights to stuff. The original art is yours, all that kind of thing. Their rights were just to publish the book and sell that book in reissues and so forth. You know, but whatever you did with the art and all that later on was your deal, you know, which was what I wanted. So anyway, um, we're at Dark Horse, and I talked to Mike, of course, every once in a while. He was still up. I guess he was doing things with Peter Laird, or somehow still connected up with Turtles up there. Um,
Yeah, Laird
I,
continued for quite a while after Kevin.
yeah, okay, so that's what Mike was still hooked up with. You know, he had already bought a house up there and all that stuff. He was entrenched there and everything, and for good reason. And uh, at Dark Horse, you know, Phil had asked me because I think I brought him into the Kubert School one time to talk to the students. In fact, I'm sure I did now that I think about it. Bringing an editor in, and Phil was a great guy. He didn't. Some of these guys, like who's the Spider-Man guy from Marvel? Yeah, I'm sure you know who he's talking
Stan
about.
Lee?
Yeah. Stan
Okay.
Lee. You know, when Stan Lee or somebody else would come to the Kubert school there, you know, they'd like read the riot act to these students and think that they were giving them the truth of how hard the business is and everything, but you don't dash the spirit of a kid. You know, you just don't know how, you know, like Mike's thing. You know, I was kind of discouraging him in a little bit, but I didn't say don't do it. You know, it's stupid, you know, anything like that. Because I could see he was enthused for it, you know.
Sure.
Um, you never know where it's going to go, you
Yeah.
know. And so anyway, I didn't like those kind of guys. And Phil wasn't one of those kind of guys. He encouraged everybody. You have to see something in a student, excuse me, that's going to keep them going, you know. And so that when they come back later on, they're going somewhere and they've made a success with something or they're on the way to it. And they say, you know, yeah, it's a little ego stroke, but they say, yeah, you know, what you were telling me and what you got me excited about carried me, you know. And that's what I was saying about this first art teacher that I had, you know, he whispered in my ear, you're going to be an artist, you know, bam, that was enough, you know. So
Sure.
anyway, so it was bugging me that when Kitchen Sink went under, that they still had my artwork
Hmm.
in an archive someplace up there in Northampton, Massachusetts. And I tried to get it back from them and all this kind of stuff. You know, they weren't having it. They were saying, you know, we're holding on to it. We're going to try and publish it and all this crap, you know. I didn't believe any of it. Whether
Hmm.
it was true or not, who knows. But Mike finally says to me, and he's up there, and he says, I can probably get you into the warehouse So maybe you better not really say that. I don't know if there's any kind of legality or illegality to it. But he says they could probably get you into the warehouse. And it wasn't like a film noir thing. We're going in there and darkness with flashlights and all that crap. We went in there, we got in somehow. And there was this big box, which I still have down in my storage room of all the artwork. And I was able to take it home that day. And I got in the car, man. I flew down to New Jersey. I wasn't going near Northampton again. So I got a short story about that. I got all the artwork back. I have it here. It's never been published. Dark Horse with Phil was going to pick it up, and then they decided not to. They decided that war comics are not the thing, so they didn't want to pick it up and go anywhere. So it's sitting here waiting to go someplace someday, so.
Now, when Dooney was like your student, I'm curious what your impression of him was, his art was. Did it resemble what he'd do later?
No,
Oh,
no,
interesting.
he's just a good artist.
Yeah,
When he was there, he was doing illustration assignments, and then I don't recall what one I might have given him, but he was probably getting it from the cartoon and comic book teachers that were in that class. Mine was specifically a painting, so every problem we had to solve with painting in the end. You had
sure.
to draw, of course, and all that. But no, we were doing semi-realistic stuff, montage type of things. I seem to recall him doing, like something that would be a film poster, like a James Bond thing or something, where you'd have, I don't know if this was one, but you'd have James Bond in the center holding up the pistol or whatever, a couple of girls and some gadgetry around him, montage art, and he was doing that kind of thing, and he was becoming a good painter. So, that's all I really remember him doing. And
Gotcha.
years later, when he did come, because I was teaching there for another 8 years, he brought some of the turtle stuff, and I still wasn't that thrilled with it. Maybe if it was more of the imagery that it is now, you probably have a different idea of it.
Sure, yeah.
You're a big turtle guy, I didn't think it was bad, but I just thought it needed a little polish to it. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, were you surprised when, like, because there's a period there, like 1990, 1991, where, there's turtle cereal on the shelves and movies and like, were you like surprised that it was everywhere then?
um, yeah, I guess surprised is the right word, but I'd known because Mike was giving me the whole story as it was going. So
Oh, I see. Like, oh, there's a cartoon coming, there's a movie coming, et cetera, et cetera. I see. Sure.
I'll tell you, my two sons, who are now grown, um, we used to go to comic conventions with them, and I'd have them carry in all my crap, with my wife at the time. And Mike would always give them special attention. And when we'd go up to Northampton for whatever reason, the boys would come. So, Mike was a hero to them. And they were turtle fans and all that stuff. They had everything turtle, and all that kind of
Sure.
stuff. So,
You know,
but yeah, I
oh, go
was
ahead.
aware, you know. But I in the beginning, when it was basically the black and white stuff, I never thought it would explode,
Sure.
And I knew because Mike had shown me some color things that he'd done, you know. And I figured, yeah, I didn't say anything to him about it, but I figured, okay, well, they're doing some ads for different things and, stuff like that they wanted a painter for and everything. But I just didn't think it would go that big.
No, but
Well,
you ended up almost doing a turtle story when so this I mean I've only seen images of it, but I mean I know I think it's Raphael in a fighter plane. Can you talk a little bit about what the story would have been? Because
sure.
1991.
Yeah, well, Mike was always saying, he goes, we got to get you to do a turtle story. I said, yeah, well, fine. I said, if we come up with something, I'm gung ho for it. So he was thinking, let's do something. And he wrote it. And I wish I've been digging around. I got stuff in my studio here. It's a small studio, but I have a storage room down in the garage in the basement. and I have the penciled pages somewhere for it.
Okay.
He did me like
Oh,
a
so the whole book got written out.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. It
Oh
was
wow.
I just never somehow I don't remember how, but somehow it died that it wasn't going to be done.
Hmm.
I'm notoriously slow with doing comic stuff, and if somebody, I mean, I'm a true illustrator. If freelance illustrator, if somebody gives you time, you take the time on it. You know, you
Okay.
never even. I shouldn't say this, but even if you get something done ahead, you don't deliver it ahead. You hold it till the last minute.
Well, because then they think you can do more in less time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the editors of the client might want to make changes then, you know, so it's a whole game in the stuff, you know. So
Sure.
and you know, you sit and look at it and you might want to make changes to it, you know. And yeah, you know, and you figure if you do it fast, then they're going to expect everyone to be fast like that, you know. And then you get a call when they're in a pinch. Can you get this to me Monday? And you go, damn, you know.
So what
So
would
that,
this have been? One issue of of a comic or a special? Like what would this have been?
I think it would have been about a 4 or 5 page, maybe 6 page something as a part of a regular comic.
Full color or black and white?
Color would have been full color painted stuff like I do.
Okay, because they did a lot of specials. I'm guessing it might have been one of those because the
Might have
other
been,
stuff was usually black and white, so it must have been a special.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't going to be black and white because the pencils. I'm not sure now that we talk about if I even finished all the pencils. Mike, I had, like I say, had done a breakdown of the story, small little thumbnails of each page. You know, I mean, that's as you know, that's what you do. You know,
Right.
most of, and which a lot of times I love the breakdowns that I do and other artists do more than I do the finished piece. But anyway, he did that, and it was up to me to draw the final stuff, and I had was drawing them up to size, you know, as I do, and then they would have been transferred to watercolor paper, and that's what I would have painted them on. And I have them here someplace. I just got to find them, you know.
Do you
So
recall what the story would have been? Like what
yeah,
we're doing in the plane?
yeah. I'll give you a synopsis as much as I
Please. Yeah.
remember. Um, it was a story. Yeah, he's restoring an old biplane. You know, he's out in the
Oh,
country.
wait,
Some
was it Donatello then?
um,
I see a red mask, but of course all of them had red masks, and the only one who would be doing that might be the smart one, Donatello.
okay, might be. I don't recall. So,
Oh, that makes more sense. That's interesting. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
um, you know, Mike did state that, but I'm not that up on. Well, what did I? Oh, okay, it was red.
Well, but in the original, I just went to red because that's their colors in most iterations. But in the original comics, which you would have been writing for in that in the Mirage era, everybody had a red mask, so each one was.
Yeah. Well, I think I had a red mask on all those little paintings that I did.
Yeah, so I bet you it was Donatello though. That would make more sense in character, I think.
Yeah. Well, you know, whoever it was, and I don't remember. I'd have to
That's fine.
see the drawings. And Mike's breakdown. It's not that I can even find that without finding the pages, because they were on a sheet right with it. You know.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was a story of him, I guess, Donatello, repairing and restoring this old biplane that he found. You know, it went pretty quick. I guess I think it was only like 6 pages, and it goes through him messing with it, and he finally takes it up, and he's flying around. It's out in the country, and you know he's dreaming of all this Red Baron stuff and all this, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, out of the distance comes like a Red Baron and some German fighter planes coming after him, whatever. And he's diving and, you know, fighting with them and all this stuff. And turns out at the end, the punchline is that it's a place like up in Rhinebeck, New York. I don't know if you know it, but there's an old thing called the Rhinebeck Airdrome where they put
Oh
on,
yeah, they do like air shows, right?
yeah, and they're flying around the Hudson Valley up there all the time. So
Sure.
that's what he was running into, you know. And it probably all derives out of because Northampton is not far from that area. Mike knows that area and all that. So, he came up with that. And that's what it was. That was the punchline. An innocent story that ends up with a laugh at the end.
Oh
So,
man, it's too bad that never made it. So I guess
yeah.
it disappeared one day, or
Um, I guess, if I could find it, um, I could scan it and post it somewhere or send it to you.
that's super interesting. I love that stuff. Like
I just,
I'm also like I'm so interested in like not just turtle history, but like would be turtle history, and
yeah,
that's super cool. And so skipping ahead, you had another turtle interaction in 2012 when you were working for Macy's, correct?
yeah. Well, I also, just to go back a little bit,
Please.
another fella that Bill Pressing.
Yes, I want to give a shout out to Bill. So, an artist, Pixar named Bill Pressing was the one. A student of yours
Yeah.
referred me to you and told me that you have some cool pieces of turtle history to talk about.
Okay.
So yeah, I want to give a shout out to Bill Pressing, who's a great artist at Pixar, listener to this program, and I met him once at a con. He's a heck of a nice guy.
Yeah. No, he's another terrific artist, much in the vein of Mike.
Sure.
Doing. Well, maybe you wanted to talk about him later.
No,
Um,
let's talk about him now. Bill's great. I would love to hear about what your impression of him was. He's like I said, he's worked on a bunch of Pixar stuff. For those who don't know the name
yeah.
of me.
Well, he was at the Kubert School. I
Okay.
think I think he may have been another one. It's odd now that I think about it. Who was a student the second year that I taught at the Kubert School, just as Mike was in the second year that I was at the SVA.
Okay.
But Bill was always kind of the Kubert School, and they were all comic guys, and they were all dressing in long black cloaks and leather jackets and all this, acting out their superhero fantasies. Now, I'm not ridiculing or making fun, but that's just the way it is at the Kubert School.
Okay.
And he was not that kind of guy.
Okay.
He's a short guy, and he was always studiously working on his work.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? He wasn't goofing around. He wasn't acting out any parts. Wasn't being a wise ass, and all that stuff. He was just nose to the grindstone and cranking things out and everything like that. So I kept in touch with him too, and he went on to get other work, and I finally caught up with him again. I think he caught up with me when he was doing Pixar stuff. So that's how I found it. So he's another guy that made great success. That was in that same mold as Mike Dooney and everything.
And he's worked on Ratatouille, Turning Red, Incredibles, Up, like a whole bunch of really amazing projects. Venture
Yeah,
Brothers, people who like that show. Like he's done a ton of stuff, Bill.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and he's a painter too. He knows how to paint and everything. That's what I always used to tell the students. I'm not necessarily here to teach you to be a painter in the end, but the more you know about making images and artwork, the better it's going to serve whatever it is that you want to do. You know, even with nowadays with computer coloring and all that kind of stuff, you still have to know to make good work. You still have to know those kind of things. You have to know how light hits things. You have to know the color. If you're doing a turtle, you can't just add white to the light side of a green head on a turtle. You know what I mean? To
Sure.
make it exciting, to make it better, to make it some kind of quality. You know what I mean? You add other colors or you apply it in such a way and all that. Bill got all that stuff. So
He's got
um,
he's got I'll recommend people check out his Instagram too. He's done some cool like he's a big turtle fan, even though he hasn't worked in the turtle. But he's done some cool turtle art and stuff like that. He's done a lot of really amazing stuff.
yeah,
That it's worth following both him and you.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I had no idea. I guess I didn't mention. I'm sure I told the story about Mike and me telling him, don't mess with that turtle stuff. But only recently, since he got in touch with you, just a little bit before, he and I got in touch on Instagram, and somehow we got talking about Mike Dooney. somehow I said something that I know Mike Dooney, and he like went nuts. Hey, you know Mike, blah blah blah. And I said, yeah. I said years ago I did a turtle story that never saw the light of day. And he went, holy geez, we got to find that and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I know a guy who does a podcast. So that's
Oh,
how
okay.
it went. He was amazed that I had even, got my finger into something turtles at all. You know what I mean? So,
I had met him at a con, Portsmouth Minicon last year. It was this event up in Portsmouth, Massachusetts, and he was just a great, unassuming guy.
yeah, yeah, he is. He is terrific. That's how I was describing him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, where do you want to go from there?
I would just love to hear about. So I knew you worked for Macy's for a time. How'd you
Oh,
end up there, and what was the turtle relation there? Because you've shown me some very cool arts of some very cool art from float concepts for the
yeah.
Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade that I wanted to share.
Yeah. Well, I had bailed on Kubert School after 10 years. I got a little tired of teaching as much as I loved it. And I tried to go back to it a couple of years ago, but then um, I got tired of it because, like anything else, if you're doing the same thing over and over, it gets to be a little boring. And I was teaching at the Kubert School, and it got to be to the point that, come October, classes would start in September, come October, come November, I know just what's coming. I know what students are going to say. I know what the better ones that are more enthusiastic are going to do. I know that the kids that are goofing off are going to do. And I just got tired of it.
Sure.
So I want to go back to just straight freelance. And not that Kubert School paid much money, but it was a way to still be involved in feeding off of young students. That sounds bad, feeding off them, but you just
I get what you're saying, though. Yeah,
as a teacher you do, because they show you things and you get enthused with helping them do something to their work to make their work better, and that's what you feed off of.
sure.
uh, so anyway, so that was about the time that computer coloring and working on tablets and so forth like that was starting to happen. And I'm still not crazy about it. um, to me, artwork has got to be something that you hold in your hand. It's on a piece of paper or a canvas or a piece of board or something like that that has been done by a human hand and
Yeah.
not by a stylist that gets then projected with light behind it. Not that I hate it and people do great stuff with it, but there was not as much work for somebody like me anymore.
I see.
So I was looking around for something else, and I saw an ad, and don't forget what it was. Now, could have been the New York Times, because that's where you got a lot of work from. Classified ads. That's all gone away. But for an artist, and it was Macy's Parade Studio, and I never even watched the Thanksgiving Day Parade. It wasn't a thing in our family, really.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't know what they did. Like everybody else, I thought it just happened on Thanksgiving Day. So I went down for an interview. Um, the head of the studio liked my stuff, and I had done some comic work and stuff by that time. And well, this was already 2004, 2005, and they gave me the job, and it was a regular paycheck, and it was 5 days a week, but I also had time to work on weekends and evenings, still do freelance work, what I got in, which I cultivated. Never wanted to let that go. So I was there doing design work. Every balloon and parade float that came through, they weren't generated by Macy's for the most part. They were clients like Disney, the Turtles, whoever, whatever, cereal companies, General Foods, Mars Candy, whatever. They would contract with Macy's to do a float or a balloon or something like that.
Okay.
And Macy's, we had 2 or 3 artists there, like myself, that would come up with concepts and ideas and designs for these things. And we sort of compete the three of us, in the beginning, they gave us assignments and we revolted against that. We said, we can come up with better stuff if you let all three of us come up with concepts, thumbnails, and then we pitch them to either the higher ups at Macy's or to the client. And the client picks what they want. And then we massage it from there. It's like making a movie, with the people that build it and all that. You're not the sole creator of things, but it's a group effort. So anyway, that's what we were doing. And the Turtles thing came along.
And now they
So,
were owned by Nickelodeon at this point. Or no, not yet.
tell you the truth, I don't remember who.
It was 2012. They were already owned by Nickelodeon. I think it was for the 2012 around
Yeah,
that, I think.
probably Nickelodeon, yes.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I gave it all to my grandson, and he's probably destroyed it all by now. But I was looking for it to send it to you. I think I sent you a few things.
You did. It's a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Like just like potential float designs. There's some with giant turtles on top, some that are just sewers. Like it's really cool stuff. Like I love concept art like this. Yeah, it's all dated 2024,
Yeah,
2012. And it's all like the that cartoon, specifically, that take on the cartoon.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm talking about, I think that was my drawings, my thumbnails, I believe.
Yes, yes, yes.
What
But I
I'm
mean,
getting at
based
is,
on the yeah.
yeah, I always, everything that I ever did for Macy's, I kind of stashed away and took it home. My artwork.
Sure.
So, which Macy's didn't allow. They owned everything. And, 5-10 years from now, it's going in the dumpster somewhere. But anyway, what I was going to say, they gave us a whole bunch of material, background material, like 10, 20 pages of concept stuff.
Oh yeah, they sent you style guide stuff for sure.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
style guide, that's it.
Yeah.
So far removed already from Macy's, I forgot about what they call all that stuff. Yeah, but we get style guides from everything. And it had backgrounds. It had what they thought might be a good float thing, all that kind of. There was tons of stuff, background material. And I wish that I still had it. You'd love this stuff. I think it was all stuff that nobody sees except for somebody that's working on it.
Sure.
There's some that I sent you. Might be a couple of pages of.
There's a bunch of really cool stuff. Like I love this stuff. Like it's so cool to see it so rough and like it's clear. Like I don't know. I love looking at concept art like this. It always fascinates me.
Yeah, well, you and me both. Because that's where the real ideas of things are.
Yeah, and they're so loose and like I feel like that's where like there's a lot of life in it still. Sometimes things get over rendered. So I love looking at this stuff.
100%, Brian. 100%. So yeah, I mean, they didn't pick my float design. A lot of times Macy's would go with something that's a little safer.
Okay, makes sense. Sure. I should describe like some of yours had giant turtles on them. A couple of them had like a humongous shredder statue
Yeah,
on the back of it. Which
yeah.
was really cool stuff. Do you remember any thought or anything that went into it that you were like, or any highlights from your design that you wanted to include?
Well, actually, all of them. That sounds like I think I'm hot shit, but
Well, you got to be excited about it, right? I mean, to do it, you got to be.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. When we were doing the concepts, I'm thinking, man, I got this knocked. you know, Sometimes though the concepts don't even get to the client. And that's not saying they would have picked mine, but sometimes things get killed by Macy's earlier on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that may have happened with mine because there's, again, like I say, there's a lot of parameters in there. If it's too involved to make, Macy's has to figure out the people with logistics, the carpenters, the welders, all the people that are making stuff, the sculptors, can we crank this thing out in the time that we have to do it?
Sure.
It may be a great design, but if we can never get it finished, what good is it and everything? And all this stuff has to, for the parade floats, we had parameters, and that even those little thumbnails were loosely based on parameters. They couldn't be taller than like 30 feet tall.
Okay.
And wider than, I think, 12 feet, something like that. Because everything has to fold up and go through the Lincoln Tunnel.
Oh, sure. That's so funny. Like it's the things you never think about. Sure.
Yeah, that has to be designed into it, which we had to think about as the concept artist a bit, but not 100%, you know.
Sure.
So that was part of the whole deal. So I was thinking about the height, but I always wanted to get things that, because when you're in New York City, and if I'm going on too much about the parade crap,
Oh, this is cool. I love this. I love the parade personally. I'm a fan of like I do watch that every year. Like I love this stuff. So please.
yeah, well, I became a fan of it afterwards too. But I never really like comic art. I never realized what went into it. You know,
Hmm.
so I always felt, and some of the other artists did too, that when you're in New York, if you have something that's only 30 feet tall and it's coming down the avenue and there's all these gigantic buildings around it, it's still going to look small, you know. So I wanted to do something always that had an impact,
Sure.
that stood up there, that was big, that had a presence, you know. So that's what I was always trying to do. Hence the giant. What was that character's name?
Shredder.
The
The bad.
Shredder.
Yeah.
You know, that was that. I always wanted to have something like that, you know. So, and you know, the like the Turtles people and everybody, they would give us bits like the underground, you know, the Turtles lair and all those things, and they'd give us little bits that they wanted to see. So that was encompassing some of the other things around. Why it would be, you know, like the sewer underneath it and so forth, like that.
I feel like
So
I don't remember exactly, but I feel like the one they went with was like it was like a street city rooftop thing, whereas yours were very sewer based. I
yeah,
think
exactly.
I
Yeah.
remember correctly.
Well, we actually did two Turtles floats while I was there, and I may not have been chosen as one to do the concepts of the other one, which was I think I sent you a few photos of part of it, and I'm not sure which I had there, but there were two. There was one that had a zip line and one that had something different about it. So
Oh, no, I don't know.
I didn't have both, you know. So
Oh, I see another one here. Oh my gosh, these are cool. Yeah, I love
yeah.
this.
Well, you know, as I remember, the style guides and the reference material that they gave us, they look different. I
Yes.
guess depending on
Well,
who
the
was.
turtles by that time looked I don't know if I have anything handy, but they were a CG animated show. Uh
Yeah,
yeah, they were very different looking turtles by then, much different than what Dooney was involved in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so you know, I mean, that's pretty much it. What used to happen with Macy stuff was they would contract a client like the Turtles, and whoever would contract for sometimes a 1 year float, a 3 year float, a 5 year float, or whatever. And sometimes they'd freshen up a little bit in between if they'd have a new character that they're promoting from 1 year to the next. You had to add them in somehow and all that kind of stuff. So things would change a little bit here and there, you know. So, but
Yeah, these would have been like I mean I don't it would have been these kind of turtles.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'm pulling up the Happy Meal box from which I have handy from that show.
So you know that's about it I can think of for the turtle stuff. You know.
No, that's like I said. I love turtle history. I love would-be turtle history. I'm sure I want to direct everybody to this listening to both your page and Bill's. So Bill is Bill Pressing Art on Instagram. Yours is Race and Art, RACENART at Instagram. Lots of cool stuff. Not just turtle stuff, also like other amazing covers. Lots of very cool like car artwork and some plain stuff. Like you really just awesome stuff. So it's worth checking
Thank
it
you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, the car stuff is racing like the Flying Tigers is something that I've always been interested in. So that's a niche that I developed while I was working at Macy's, knowing that one day Macy's wouldn't be for me as a job anymore.
out. Sure.
So I wanted to be able to just not miss a step. So that's I've concentrated on the car stuff, you know.
And a
So
very cool painting of Theodore Roosevelt. I'm a big American history guy, and I love to.
thank you.
That's
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that one too. That
yeah.
was That was for American Tobacco when everybody was still smoking cigarettes like
Oh,
crazy.
really?
Yeah. Well, they put out a book. I guess this was about late 1990s or so, and they called it 100 American Achievers. So it was all people through 100 years, the 20th century, that did great things and shaped American culture and everything. So
Oh,
I did four of them. One was the Teddy Roosevelt. Another one was Matthew Brady, photographer from the Civil War.
okay.
Uh, Geez, who was the guy? Kettering, Charles Kettering, who was great in cancer,
Okay.
spending money on
Oh, it's like
cancer.
Sloan Kettering. I see. Got
Yeah,
it. Yep.
yeah. He also developed he was an automotive engineer and developed the self starter. And
Oh,
who's
wow.
there's another one that was uh, a guy who built hotels and everything. Can't
Oh,
remember, but you had to do a portrait of each one of those.
oh,
And
wow.
Teddy, I mean, you can't beat Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, I've read probably, I would say, literally 20 to 30 books about Theodore Roosevelt.
No
I'm
kid. Yeah, great stuff.
endlessly fascinated by him.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever see the movie? We're getting off track a little. Did you ever see the movie The Wind and the Lion?
I've had that forever. I have a DVD of sitting it somewhere, and I don't know what it is. There's a part of me that's like, I don't know if this is going to be good, and I don't know if I want to watch it. Is it good? I've never watched it.
Damn it, it's good.
Yeah, okay.
If you dig comic-y type stuff, it's good. And it's Sean Connery, and the fella, what's his name, Milius or something, is who wrote it. It's a good story. It's a good story.
I've been meaning to like I said, I've had the DVD. I've probably had that DVD unopened for 10 years, and maybe longer, and I've never
Yeah.
watched the movie.
I just saw it the other night on Turner Classic
Oh,
Movies.
well.
That's why it's fresh in my mind. But Teddy Roosevelt is in it.
Yeah, he's a character in it.
Yeah,
I forget who plays him.
yeah. Brian Keith, I think.
That sounds right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's good. It's good. It's it's not realistic. It's based in a kind of reality, but it's
Sure.
fiction. It's changed, but it's great adventure. Terrific adventure.
I'll have to finally put
Yeah.
that in and check it out.
Yeah. Well,
I want to I usually ask people who their favorite turtle is when the interview wraps up. I'm guessing you don't have one. Is that fair to say?
no, not really.
Okay. Here's a question. So you've done a lot of you've done Batman, Superman, Aliens, Predator. Do you have a particular favorite character, mainstream comic character that you've gotten to do a cover of that was like particularly special or felt important to you?
Um, well, this this is a little. I might have two.
Sure.
Uh, Batman is one. That's it. And I've only really done one Batman cover. I've done some other Batman stuff, but I just think that the character is great. I'm not so crazy about the troubled, loaded with angst Batman, but I've always loved the Batman character as a kid. You
Okay.
know, and I still do like that character. The idea that he doesn't have a superpower, things like that. You know what I mean? That to me, that's great.
Sure.
So. Uh, and the other is Predator, actually, because I did. It's probably because I did work for him. I did four covers for when Phil was at Dark Horse. Um, a former student of mine, Toby. Oh man, this is terrible. I forgot his last name. Um, did the stories inside. It was a mini series, and I did the cover. And oh God, why can't I bring his name up? But he was just another student at Kubert School. He does his own comics always now. He's shit
Predator. He was the artist or the writer?
artist, and well, no, I don't think he wrote it. I think another fellow wrote it.
Toby
But with
Cypher?
no,
Hmm. It's not coming up immediately. Toby O'Hara?
no, he doesn't do mainstream stuff. He does publishes his own things and everything now.
Got it. Oh, I was just looking up Toby.
His stuff is quite a bit different. Why can't I bring up his name? Um, but he's really good. and I Toby did the insides and I did the covers, and Phil was the editor on it.
Okay.
It was a four issue miniseries Predator kind of thing, and it was an offbeat Predator story. Um, shit. It was a story about an old predator who came back to Earth or wherever he comes into, and he's seeking out and going after in the four stories miniseries. He's going after these other kind of rogue predators that are wreaking havoc all over the place.
It's
And
Predator. It's Predator Homeworld, and it's Toby Cypress.
that's it. Toby Cypress. Toby Cypress. His name is.
Yep.
Yeah. Predator Homeworld. As soon as you said Homeworld, that's when his name came to me.
Yeah.
But it's a great story about
I'll
this
check it
old.
out. I don't follow much Predator stuff, but this looks super cool. So I'll check
It is. I think it's great. Toby's work is different than like almost everybody else's stuff too. He does superheroes, but it's not the standard superhero stuff. You know what I mean? And his stuff is great drawings, but it's quirky stuff. It's based in great drawing and design and all that, but it's a little out there somewhat. You know what I mean? So anyway,
Well, I mean, I'll be sure to check that out. It's Predator
yeah,
Homeworld. That's from 1999. Joel, thank you for doing this. Super interesting, and I love talking about this and getting to the other avenues of turtle history and talking to artists. So I appreciate your time. Thank you. This is great.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was terrific, Brian. And let me know when you get it all together, or do whatever.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I'll be posting this within the next like month tops, give or take.
Okay, or if anything else comes up,
All
don't
right. Thank you.
hesitate to drop me a line or something like that.
Sounds good.
And if I dig up the turtles thing, I'll scan it and send it out to you.
Oh my gosh, please let me know because that sounds fascinating. So
Okay. All right. Terrific.
take care.
So long, Brian.
Bye.